Hi, so for my third textual analysis, I'm going to be analysing the short film 3 Tears for Jimmy Prophet, and I'm going to talk about in terms of its style. So the director of 3 Tears for Jimmy Prophet is Shane Meadows, and Jimmy is played by Paddy Considine, and the two of them work quite closely together. They've made 6-part sketches, which is on YouTube, and when I was looking at them, I thought that Shane Meadows' style is quite unique. And when I looked at 3 Tears for Jimmy Prophet, I chose to do this one because I think it's got more to talk about in terms of the style, the way it's shot, the way that it looks, really. When I was watching the film, the first thing that occurred to me was the quality of the camera. I don't know if this is just that they used a camera that didn't have a very good quality or if it was edited to make it look like it was a bad camera, but I think it was really clever. If it was all crystal clear and, very had a lot of pixels and, looked professionally made, I don't think it would have had the same effect. It would have looked quite, studio set up Hollywood sort of, and it doesn't. It looks like it has just been filmed by just a normal person, which I think is the feel that Shane Meadows wanted us to feel because it's a social realism film and it wants, people to look at the film and be able to relate to it and to, interact with the film in itself, really. So the film starts off with some short clips of Jimmy just standing there, and he looks quite bad, he looks quite tough. There's a specific shot which is in a low angle, which makes him look, like he's towering over the camera. It makes him look quite powerful, and I think also his facial expressions, they look quite emotionless and stern. Like, we get this idea that he's not someone we want to mess around with. And also, we can tell straight away that he's some sort of boxer because he's got his hands in, all these kind of positions, and the second thing that I wanted to talk about was the fact that the whole film was shot in black and white, which I think is really clever. It creates this melancholy kind of somber feel to it, and it definitely creates some sort of atmosphere that the whole film has, really. We only have one actor throughout the whole film, Jimmy, which I think is important because in social realism we want to see something from a perspective and one person's perspective normally, because it makes the story, we gain an emotional kind of, feelings for the character, as in we sympathise with his character. Like, if he's hurt, we get hurt, and we want to kind of grow that, emotional connection with his character. The other thing was that the location stays the same, and obviously if you've seen the film, Jimmy goes into prison, and I think the fact that it's in one location, apart from the pictures that are there at the beginning, it kind of makes him seem like he's trapped. He's in a sort of gymnasium with, a boxing ring and stuff like that, and because it's in this one location throughout the whole film, I think that the audience get this sense that his boxing career is what's caused him to be trapped and isolated from the rest of society. Other things like everything stays kind of similar. He's wearing the same outfit, things like that, that make it seem less about the story and more about the narrative. Like, the whole film is dragged by its narrative about what Jimmy's telling you, rather than, really fancy locations and, really great colours and things like that. Like, it all just is very simplistic, and I think that's what makes it, the style of it really important. For anyone who hasn't seen it, I wanted to just give you a really quick summary. Basically, Jimmy doesn't go out a lot. He goes to a club one day and he's provoked by someone, and something in him just kind of switches. So this guy keeps pushing that, he wants to fight him and that, and he realises that, the guy's only doing it because, he wants some sort of reputation. When he actually hits Jimmy, something switches in him and Jimmy ends up hitting him twice. And he says that he notices that he's died, really. He said nothing really showed him, but he just knew that he was dead. And obviously Jimmy ends up in prison, loses everything, his family and his business. So the whole film's sort of set in a style of an interview. Obviously we have certain flashbacks and other things that are added, but most of it is just Jimmy sitting in front of a camera and basically telling the story. So simplistic, but works really well. It's a social realism film, and it focuses on some sort of less common themes that we don't really see very much. It focuses on convicts, manslaughter, and something that may be a bit more common, which is father-daughter relationships. So we get this flashback to him in the ring, after in his interview. You know, he's still talking. The voice is, you know, played over him in his flashbacks of him in the ring, and we kind of get this perspective that that's what he enjoys, that's what he likes doing, but it's also what's ruined his life. And I think that's important. And also I think the style of the editing is really important to create an atmosphere, really. It goes from these really quick cuts that are, you know, that transition and cut really quickly, and they're like shorter clips of him training, and it kind of builds up this energetic feel of him training. It's kind of just like quick, and then it changes to this slow, longer shots that have longer fades and transitions, and it kind of changes the mood automatically, makes it feel more, you know, like he's sad, like he's hurt. It kind of reflects his emotions, that he's like been destroyed by everything that's happened, and we kind of start then like sympathising with his character and feeling really bad for what's happened for him, even though we know that in most scenarios he'd be played as the villain, the bad guy, and we kind of don't see that. We more feel a bit sorry for him. So yeah, there's some dialogue that makes us feel, I'd say, slightly uncomfortable, where he says he was being a pain in the arse, but he didn't deserve to die, and he starts talking about that there's no emotion on his face, like when he's hit him, which I think is quite, you know, sensitive topic, but it's kind of, it gets the message across that it needs to. Like, he knows that he did bad, he feels bad for it, sort of thing. Another bit of dialogue that I think is important in our building our relationship with Jimmy's character is when he says that 2 times a month, sometimes when I go out, I can go anywhere and get it. And yeah, again, we're still sympathising with him. We feel bad that he, you know, he's telling us that he doesn't go out a lot, and when he does, he just, you know, he just gets into trouble and people just want to start, and, you know, he doesn't really like that. And I think that's where we start feeling, we kind of not understand, but we kind of start to see a bit more like background, where we can see that it must be hard for someone who goes out and is constantly dragged into, you know, to bad situations, and we start thinking that it's not really very fair. And it's good because we get to see it from just one perspective. We don't get to hear like the perspective of, say, the person who got killed. We don't get to see his perspective, obviously he's dead, or his family, or any sort of that side. It's just his one perspective. I think that's what makes the social realism films quite, you know, in depth. And there's also another interesting shot. So when he's actually telling us about the man that's being hit and his fuse going, it cuts to a shot of us in the ring with Jimmy, and it's just a flashback. And yeah, so as he's talking about him hitting the guy, the camera kind of looks at Jimmy as though the camera could be the victim, kind of like he's obviously going in at the camera a bit, as though the camera is a person that he's in the ring with, and we get this close-up of his face, and he looks quite dangerous and scary, and he looks like he's going in for the camera, and that's when we start to feel a bit frightened or uncomfortable, maybe, because, you know, it looks like he's going in on us. And I think that's when, although nothing's said specifically, it's one of the points where the kind of story, it makes us see it from a different perspective a bit. It makes us see it from the other person's perspective as to how frightened he might have been. But yeah, yeah, and as he talks about him being slumped, the camera kind of goes distant and blurry, so it kind of backs away as if like this man's fallen back. And yeah, I think it's showed to kind of look like it's a replica of what actually happened, but without it being really what actually happened. Yeah, so yeah, another quote that was used is, "There was no life, there was nothing there." And his voice starts to become shaky and stuttery. He's still, and yeah, it's just this shock, the emotion, like it's really affected him. You can hear it in his voice when he's telling the story. Like, he doesn't have to show that he's upset by like crying or anything or breaking down, but just like his dialogue, which starts to become really quite shaky, and like, yeah, you can see that it's really emotionally affected him. And I think it's really subtle things like that Shane Meadow uses, where he doesn't have to give this big dramatic thing. It's just kind of like little things that build and build and build up until we get these atmospheres, and yeah, like a really good narrative and story, really. Yeah, another thing is with the dialogue that he swears a lot, like, and that's obviously another sign that he's really hurt and that he's angry towards the whole situation. Like, he still hasn't recovered from it. Oh yeah, and then there's another thing as well that I wanted to talk about as well, is with his daughter. So he starts to talk about the fact that he's kind of lost his relationship with his daughter, and he goes down her school and he walks past her and like his daughter doesn't even recognise her. And I thought the one thing that he said was quite interesting. He says that when he saw her, sorry, with someone else and the new family, his daughter, he wasn't really happy about it. Like, when he saw that she was happy with the new family, he didn't really like it. And I think that's something that is maybe an underlying truth to many situations, and I think people could relate to it. Like, they wouldn't openly say that, like, oh, when I saw my daughter with a new family and she was happy, you know, I don't think they'd openly be like, yeah, that doesn't, you know, that annoys me, whatever. So I think that's kind of like a truth, and it's a real truth. It's not sugar-coated, it's not, you know, made to look any different. And I think it's something that, yeah, although it looks kind of bad, it's something that I really think that quite a lot of people would feel, even though they wouldn't say it out loud. There's also music that goes the whole way through. It's quite slow, depressive, that also, yeah, builds an atmosphere with its slow pace. You know, it's in quite a low key, and definitely builds up the kind of depressive, melancholy, you know, feel that the short film has. Yeah, there's only a few more things I wanted to talk about. So the mirror scene, which is where we're seeing him box, and in the background's a mirror, and the camera zooms in on the mirror. So we're watching him box through the mirror, through the reflection of the mirror. And I think this is really good. I don't know if it was used in this way, but I interpreted it that it reflects that that's his image. Him boxing and him being scary and tough and fighting and strong. It's an image that, you know, he has to have for his career. And I think that made me think about, like, maybe he's not as tough as all these images in the beginning. You know, he has feelings, he's hurt by the whole situation. It is just this image that he has to give off in order for his career. And I think that was kind of important. I don't know if it was used in that way or if I've just interpreted it that way, but yeah, I think that was cool. We also get another close-up, and as he's talking about his daughter not recognising him, his face becomes blurry. And I think this is, again, yeah, it just shows that he's not the focus anymore in her life. Like, he just feels like he's inadequate, that he's unimportant, and yeah, his character literally becomes a blur, and that's probably how he feels. He also says that he's not going to give up on his daughter, but we see him kind of rubbing his eyes, looking really distraught at the end. Like, this whole time that he's talked about killing, you know, this man, and he doesn't seem to, like, obviously his shakiness in his voice is a bit, you know, reflective of his emotion, but we actually see him break down when he talks about his daughter. And although he says he's not going to give up, his kind of facial expressions and the way he's really upset by it suggests that he feels kind of hopeless. Like, he looks hopeless. He looks like he doesn't know what to do anymore. And the final thing that I'm going to talk about is the thing that was really important as well. It's a final shot where he's packing all his bags into his locker in the room, and he's doing a bit of training, and then he just lies on the floor and he just looks as though he's dead. And I think this can be perceived in two ways. It shows him laying dead, and you know, that he is the character, that character had no life, that character, you know, died, and, you know, the man that he killed had died, and it might just be reflective of that. But it could also be reflected as him giving up because his guilt starts to consume him. Like, the other man died, but now, because it's affected him so badly, that now he's kind of dead as well. Like, you know, his guilt's consuming him, he's lost everything. And yeah, I just think that's what it might also mean. Also, I think him packing his bags is kind of this reflection that although this was his life, it's now made him trapped. He's now trapped within the boxing, and that he needs to give it up. And I think that's what's really important. So yeah, that's my third textual analysis. Thank you.